Man, I love that new intro. I got to give it up to our team, Tom. That intro is absolutely amazing. But everyone, welcome back to another Broker to Broker podcast. I'm your host, Marc Summers, founding president of AIME. Today, a lot of content here. We're going to do some phenomenal things with our guests. It's an exciting episode for the broker community. Today, we're going to welcome Chief Growth Officer at Safetrust Mortgage, Mahb Rahman. Mahb, thanks for joining us today, my man.
Mark, happy to be here. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you extending the invite.
Yeah, no problem, dude. This is going to be fun. Mob's a local guy near me, so we get to see each other a little bit here and there. So we should have a little bit of fun here and have probably a little bit of banter back and forth. But Mob, you have a background like a lot of people do within our industry. If I'm not mistaken, you started out at Quicken Loans, correct?
Correct. Yeah, back when they were Quicken Loans. Yeah, I went from selling shirts at the mall at Somerset, which is like a couple miles away from me now, to pre-approving people at Rocket and getting trained over there. I spent like a year over there when I was 19 is when I started.
And at that time, I'm just going to say it, they're retail in my eyes for a good portion of it. So retail to wholesale, what lessons did you get from that going over to Safe Trust?
Yeah, I mean, you know, retail to me is like more of like the shiny, it's like that shiny object, that like attracts you to it, whereas wholesale, it may not look the prettiest, where it's like, in wholesale now, especially just being on both sides, I think of wholesale and being a broker more of like rolling my sleeves up, doing the dirty work essentially, and really problem solving and just being more of like a subject matter expert in terms of the whole industry. Like I have never felt more experienced to answer any question that comes my way. Now being a broker versus being a retail banker. A retail banker, it was more so just like, hey, how can I get this information on the application, and how can I get the borrower's commitment as quickly as possible. And especially coming from a call center environment, I didn't really have like a lot of distributed retail experience. But as far as like that call center vibe and just getting, understanding how to take an application call and qualifying and things like that, a lot of like my foundation was built there, I guess you could say, in that regard. But when it comes to like knowing the rest of the industry and like problem solving and like, hey, we had this easement pop up on title, or I have tidewater on a VA appraisal, and things like that, like how do I problem solve and really overcome those hurdles, whereas in retail you were kind of, all those things were done behind a curtain where like you really had no idea. So I think that's what really helped me, and then that's why I've always been, even in retail, I was always a purchase focused loan officer. That's what I was trained in. But just understanding the industry as a whole, I think really helped, especially with my, you know, with how I like to educate borrowers, on the front end, essentially. Whereas before, I think it was more so just like, hey, what's your date of birth and your social, and and just hammering that home until I got what I needed off the phone call. But now it's like there's a greater goal at the end, right? Back then, it was just like the goal is just to get them into underwriting. Now it's like, hey, we've got to get it closed. Where it's there's a lot more on the line, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
more relationship building, right?
yes, 100%. Yeah. And I think like the portion of my career really helped with that, like just understanding the relationship side of the business.
Well,
Um,
tell us about that. So you were at Quicken and then you went to
UWM. Yep.
as
So
an
I spent.
AE.
Yep. Yep. So I spent almost 7 years at UWM. Started as an account executive. Was a team lead for a while. Grew one of the largest accounts in the country. Um, and it was a very humbling experience, because like retail teaches you like to really puff your chest out, and like to beat your chest and say, hey, like, we're the biggest baddest fish in the sea. And like especially all the sales skills and things they train you, they do a great job of instilling confidence in you. And I think that part is very, very underrated when it comes to like the training and things that retail provides. It does instill a lot of confidence in you as a salesperson, the way they train you. But when you enter wholesale, it really humbles you though. Like, and that's the first thing that, like, I remember my very first day walking into UWM and going into the training room. There was like 30, 40 people in the training room, and I was like one of the only people with the suit on, and I had like a green forest green suit on with like a white shirt and a green tie. And I was like, you know what? If I'm here to make money, I might as well look like it, you know?
I love it.
And uh I walk in, and like the first thing that's on my desk, or like on my training seat, it was a rate sheet. And like I look at it, I'm like, what is this? Like 5.75, and then it shows one negative 1.6 something, and I'm like, what does this even mean? Like, this makes zero sense. And it says 30 days, 15 days, 45 days. Like, what does this stuff mean? And then I look at the rates, and I'm like, wait, what? Like, I was selling rates that were like 2 percentage points higher than this. What is this? And and then it really humbled you. And then you like I had no idea what title was. Like, I just thought it was a part of, like, I had title on my car. I thought it was kind of the same thing. I didn't know there was more that went into it for housing or insurance, for example, and all of that. And it really humbled you, right? Like, to understand how all these things work. And it took a while. There was like a learning curve, understanding what a broker is, and that there were other lenders out there outside of the one that you worked for. And it was really eye opening. But you were right. It's a lot of relationship building at that point. And that's what really, I think, really shaped a lot of my career. The bulk of my career up until this point was that time at UWM, where I really learned the industry, but also how important relationship building is in this industry.
No, you're absolutely right on that. If you don't create relationships, you're just acting like retail. You know what I mean? And then you're just like you said, you just push paper, you get the social security date of birth, and you're good to go. You know what I mean? And I think on the broker side, that gives us more of like a self purpose on all of this. It's like, man, we're really helping people out here. Yes, we're making money, but we really get to help these people out, educate them, make sure they're set up, in the proper program, and that they're educated on everything. When you were at UWM, obviously dealing with a ton of brokers, and we love our broker community. With that's we're the broker community here. What would be one of the biggest things that you would say our current broker community kind of messes up on, or like it was like the biggest pain point for you? Because I know what mine is, because we have like a lot of these escalations come through, but I want to see what you say first.
Hmm, man, you're putting the spotlight on me here, Mark. I would say, I mean, I would put it between two things. One of them is, like, I feel like maybe the loan structuring part. Like, I worked with a lot of different brokers, so there were some that were experts at it,
Hmm.
that their loans would always come out with 2 to 3 conditions. It would be a very clean submission to close. But then others, you could tell, didn't really put a lot of work into their 1003. And that's and what was crazy is I was the same way. Like, as a banker at Rocket, I remember there was like they had a quarterly call with like the regional vice presidents, and one of like the highest executives, literally on a call with all of these Rocket executives, all from sales, was like, who the F is this Mahb Rahman guy? And why does he always put bullshit on his applications? Because, like, back then, we would use AMP, which was like a DOS system. So like you wouldn't have a mouse, it would just be on the keyboard. So like we would all, for me, it was like, all right, how quickly can I get through this thing? And for real estate agent info, I just put what's the button? It's like parenthesis, 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 and like, and like I would put bullshit on my applications because I just wanted to get it done and quickly as possible. Because look, I felt like the longer I had the client on the phone, the more I was losing them. So I was like, the quicker I can get them off the phone and get all the information I need, the better. And I just had to get through the application. So I was guilty of the same thing, but I would say, yeah, like I learned that the hard way at UWM. What I would bring in when I would, tell loan officers, hey, bring this loan in, and then it'd come out with a bajillion conditions, and then I'm stuck helping them chase conditions all day. So the loan structuring part, I would say, is one. The other thing, to me, was client retention, and this is something that I I used to sit behind a desk at UWM and tell brokers all the time, hey, like, you got to stay in front of your past clients, you got to stay in front of your past clients. And now that I'm sitting in that seat, I understand how difficult it is. It's not a very Everyone always says, hey, it's a very easy thing to do, but like, very, very few, I feel like, in the broker channel are very, like, really excelling at it. That really have a pulse or a finger on the pulse of every single one of their clients in their database. And I'm not perfect at it either, but it's something that, even now, this morning, it was something that I was working on. But those are two things: is the loan structuring part. I feel like, the training and the consistency could be better amongst the entire broker channel, and also with client retention and just making more of a focus. I think a lot of it, sometimes we get in our own way, and we think, hey, a client doesn't want to refinance because the monthly payment savings isn't enough, and we truly may think we know that client and what's going on in their day to day, but we don't really know, like, how involved are we? Like, if you're friends on Facebook, yeah, like, everyone says, hey, I'm friends on Facebook with my clients, I know them very well. Well, when's the last time you saw someone post something negative about their life on Facebook or on social media? It doesn't happen, right? So, like, a lot of the things that they're going through in their day to day, they're not going to go and blast on socials for you to see. Like, you've really got to call them and check in with them and see how they're doing. Hey, I know, baseball season starting, like, is your kid playing baseball this year? Like, you got to have a pulse, on things, in order for them to feel like they can either confide in you, of course, which everyone likes to think as a loan officer, like, hey, my clients know me very well, they'll tell me when, when they need help. And a lot of that, I think, is our ego and pride, and we got to swallow that a little bit and say, hey, look, like, yeah, you're only saving $13 a month, but who am I to tell you that that's not enough for you and your family? You
Right.
know, and I think that's where we kind of trip on our own feet sometimes. And that those are probably two of the biggest areas of opportunity that I would say. And then, there's a lot more, um, like willingness to get yourself integrated with more tech and things like that. But I feel like, I don't know about you, but I feel like over the last 2 3 years, that's really, a lot more brokers are embracing technology, from what I can see, embracing CRMs and systems, which is a really, really good thing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think with all of our lending partners, with AIME itself, we've been hammering it, to embrace technology because obviously retail's going to, you know what I mean? And you don't have to do it the same way they do, but you have to embrace technology a little bit. The one thing that I don't want to say I get mad about, because it takes a lot for me to get mad when it comes to brokers. Like, we have brokers personally call me, go through our escalation system. The one that gets me all the time is, hey, this is scheduled to close tomorrow and you don't have a CTC. Like, I'm like, well, no, you can't, no, like, no, you can't be doing that. So it puts a lot of pressure on a lot of people. And yeah, if it works out, great, but we all know how this business is. So I just tell people, listen, just be upfront and honest with all of your realtors, your consumers, and you'll be fine. So, all right. So, Mob, you were at UWM and then you came over to Safetrust, correct?
Yes. Yep.
How did that work? What was like your biggest hurdle or eye-opening thing when you got there? Like, wow, this is way different from the retail side, the AE side, and now it's like I'm the guy. How did that go?
Yeah. It was really scary. I think a lot, like, looking back, I definitely should have been a little more, um, I don't know, prepared, I should say. I don't want to say I made the decision on a whim. Like, I was pretty set on being a broker, and it was really just a matter of when, not if. But, things like licensing and whatnot, maybe I could have been a little more prepared on. I actually, Safe Trust wasn't even on my radar, when I left UWM. I had interviewed at a couple places. I was talking to a couple different brokers, in terms of what would be the best fit, and obviously, like, when you work at UWM, kind of have the inside scoop, right, on different brokers and different models and whatnot. Marcel actually I posted a status on Facebook. It wasn't, along the lines of, "Hey, I left UWM and I was looking for opportunity," but it was like, it's a very big decision for me personally, in terms of my career. And Marcel saw that. He reached out to me on Facebook, and he said, "Hey, like I'm sure your mind's already made up, but let me just treat you to lunch. It's been a while since we caught up." Backstory is Marcel actually, when I was an account executive, Marcel was on my underwriting pod. So
Oh,
all my clients and Marcel, and actually a lot of my team members here, Ashley, um, they were on my underwriting pod. So I had known them prior to joining Safetrust, because they used to underwrite a lot of my broker's loans. So I used to see their names pop up in my email inbox a lot of the times. We'd have lunch, whatnot. So, Marcel reached out, said, "Hey, let's catch up." And he treated me. I was thinking, hey, like, I'm unemployed. At this point, what's a free lunch? So I went with him to Cooper's Hawk, and he Safetrust at the time, there was only, I think, three loan officers, three or four loan officers. They were a fairly new company. Um, and Marcel and one other originator, they were, very self-sufficient, very high level loan officers. And he basically said, "Look, like, I'm not really looking for a loan officer to join. I'm looking for a business partner. I'm looking for someone to help me grow this thing, to help me grow this into a brand, and to bring on quality people. We're not trying to be the biggest, baddest, mortgage broker on the planet." But we're not necessarily trying to be like, the smallest mom and pop shop either. We want to find a happy medium of quality and, efficiency, and doing right by people, and giving back to our communities, and really growing, not just here in Metro Detroit, but in other communities across the country. And it really resonated with me, because it was like, all the other, and no disrespect to the other brokers that I worked with, but a lot of the other people that I talked to, it was mostly just like, "Hey, here's your split, here's your tech stack, and you know here's everything else," right? Whereas with him, it was like, "Hey, here's the dream that I envisioned, what do you think, what suggestions do you have, what would you change?" And I really felt like it was more of like it was a very collaborative effort that he was making. But I could also see it, the vision that he had, in terms of leading with operations and fluidity when it comes to the process, and really empowering loan officers with the resources, and also just educate, putting yourself in a position where you can educate the consumer. Because and this is what I tell my team all the time, we have morning huddles, is, you know, e- obviously not everybody goes through the process of buying a house every single day, but you obviously do, right? Because you help these people every single day. So you have to understand that the way you explain things sometimes really resonates with people. And you might think of it as like, "Oh, I was just explaining how variable income works." Well, the way you explain it to your client really can dictate, you know, how they feel walking away from that conversation. And
right.
that's what's really important. So like like if I have a truck driver, for example, we do business in Texas all the time, work with a lot of truck drivers. So, we explain to them, "Hey, when you're paid by the load and we're paid by the mile, it's a lot different than being paid, let's say, by the hour, because it's not a set number. It depends on the load. One day you might have a very heavy load, one day you might have a very light load, or one day you might travel a long distance, one day you might not. And based on that, it's considered variable income, and they do an average. Here's why I need this document and this document, because I can do a 24-month average, and I can present your loan and your income in the best possible way to the lender and the underwriter." And that's when the client walks away and is like, "You know what? That makes a lot of sense." And those are the conversations that we kind of aim for here at Safetrust, and especially at the pre-approval stage, and just explaining all the numbers and how things work. And we really try to empower the client, because we want them to be a savvy, educated homeowner. you know 'cause it might not be the first time they buy a home, but it helps them the next go around, or helps them when they're trying to you know give advice to a friend, family member, right? About how they bought their first home. So a lot of that really shaped my decision making in joining Safetrust. And fortunately, we've been able to really, I think, triple at this point. That was 2022. So I was the third or fourth loan officer to join. We're up to 20 now. Last year was our best year ever. We did well over 500 loans as a team. Um, close to $200 million in volume. The first quarter already, I mean, we got off to a very fast start. We closed over 150 loans,
Wow.
almost 50 million in volume, and that's, we've never had a first quarter like that. So it was very, and a lot of during January and February, a lot of people were saying rates, this is going to be a rough year. So it just goes, testament to, our culture that we built. I'm very, very fortunate to be a part of this group. And we have this, like, we use this meta-based software. It's like Slack, like I'm sure a lot of
Mhm.
brokers use Slack, but it has like all of our HR stuff in there, payroll and insurance and health insurance and all that. But it's also a bunch of team chats, and our team is so great because, like, we have a group chat with all loan officers, and we have a group chat with the whole company, and a group chat with all the processors, and then of course individual chats that people have. But I was on there at 10 p.m. on Saturday because I was trying to send an updated pre-approval, and my UWM was, because I was trying to rerun their AUS, and my UWM was spinning for forever, what felt like. And I hit the chat. I'm like, hey, is anyone else's UWM spinning? I was like, in the off chance that anyone is working at 10 p.m. on a Sunday, is anyone? Lo and behold, the whole chat just boom, 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 boom. All different loan officers like, yeah, yeah, I've been trying to send an estimate for this long, this long, this long. So it's been really awesome just to see our team grow. We host these events now, and we have loan officers in Georgia and Texas now. So it's been really, really awesome to be a part of, and special just building what we have. And I really look forward to seeing what we do to, because we're a young team. We're hungry, we're young, we joke around all the time. We're very, we're professionals, but we're very unserious people at the same time. We like to have a good time. So it's been cool to
Well,
be a part of.
Well, as a team, as a leader, as you are, to know that Saturday, Sunday night, doesn't matter what it is, at 10 p.m. and you got people engaged like that, that's a damn good team right there. So you should
Yeah.
be all of you guys there should be very, very proud of that, because I know a lot of people, it's like, no, it's the weekend, I'm done. But like I tell pretty much every broker I talk to, you're never on vacation. You're always on the clock, like it or not. This is our industry, because that could be the difference of you getting a deal and you losing a deal.
Yeah,
So
or a
yeah,
relationship.
yeah, absolutely. All right. So I know you especially over there, you really love to focus on purchases. Did you write a playbook on this?
Somewhat,
Tell,
somewhat.
tell me tell me about that, because I know you're very successful with it. I know everyone is waiting for this little refi boom, and as we're recording this today, it's kind of like, wow, this is the best news today that we've gotten in a long time with what rates are doing. But like, I know we still have to focus on purchases. I tell my people all the time in my company, purchases is what you live off of. Refis are just the gravy. I mean,
Yes.
that's the bonus stuffs here. So when it comes to purchases, what are your thoughts on purchases? Give me a little rundown on that playbook, and like, what do you think you could give to us right now that could help the community to become a better purchase loan officer?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, purchases have been, that's how I learned this business, was through purchase. Refinance, I love refinances. Like you said, to me, purchases are my salary. Refinances are just a bonus, right? So with purchases, one, I think you have to have a mindset going into purchase business where it's like, it's a refinance, they have already got the house, right? So like, in essence, they don't really need you, right? Like, you're the value you provide on a refinance is a lot different. On a purchase, they can really walk away anytime. Like, you can pre-approve them, you can give them all the advice, all of the knowledge and everything you want, but they can walk away just because they're like, you know what, it's not the right time for me. Anything can happen. Life happens to everybody. So in my opinion, you've really got to have a mindset going into purchase business where it's like, hey, I like, you have to keep your doors open for business all the time, and you have to understand that not everything is always going to work out right away, right? It's a hurry up and wait game, and there's a lot of delayed gratification. And the one thing is, but the thing is if you can get past that, you have a consistent flow of business that can never be interrupted, in my opinion. Doesn't matter who acquires who, right? For however many billions of dollars, right? Like, you can't really replicate that, or you can't step in and just say, hey, I'm going to pay X amount of dollars and steal this business away from you, right? Like that, it's a lot harder. It's more of an uphill battle. So
Right.
that's the one thing. Um, my playbook is very simple. It's it's I don't care if it's the receptionist at the title company and it's split title and it's the seller's title company, right? I want to make sure that person feels like they had a part to play in helping this family get this home, but also that they did great at what their role was, and I don't care if it's just saying hello, like, to whoever walks in when we're going to the closing, right? Like, I want to make sure that person knows that, one, I'm the mortgage broker, that this is a celebration, right? That everything was done on time, that or early, and that all the expectations that were set were either met or exceeded. And that's my goal. And I learned this from a gal that I sat next to when I was at UWM, and it was something that we used to say about like mortgage brokers, but now I kind of spun it and I make it like my own thing now. And it was like, everyone's gonna remind you of things that went wrong. It's your job to remind everyone else of everything that went right, you know and that's where we really, really try to excel, is that over communication of like, hey, we got the contract on Monday, just so you know, the appraisal's already been ordered, scheduled, and due back by this date. We already have an initial approval, right? The initial closing disclosure has already gone out. We've already placed our title order. The insurance is being binded as we speak. Here's our estimated closing date. We're ready to go. And, explaining that obviously to like the agents is important. But I think where a lot of people miss the boat is not explaining it to, let's say, the title company, but just like relaying the information, closing the loop with the title company, And a lot of people don't do that with title companies, and I don't know why, because believe me, nobody sees more shitstorms in this industry than title companies do, right?
Agreed.
Especially when it comes to purchase loans. So Sally at the title company, who's had 13 closings on a Friday at the end of the month, right? a s- more There's a 50% chance that 50% of those closings did not go according to plan, maybe even higher, right? So when you come in and your docs are there on time, the lender's wire is already there, there's no funding authorization required, you had a CTC a week ago, the CD took a day, not even maybe hours to balance, right? Like, everyone, I think we all get caught up in this bubble where we expect that the business just gets done that way, and it really doesn't. And that's where we have to come in. I mean, like, obviously keep your ego in check, but brag a little, like, brag and just be a little jolly, right? Like a little happy, like, and you never know when that title rep is going to be like, man, I wish every broker was like you, right? And that's really like, you have to seize those opportunities when you hear those things, because then it's like, oh, like, did you have an agent that had a bad experience, a bad closing here? And then they'll tell you, right? Like, people love talking about bad experiences, believe it or not. And then you can say, hey, like, if that agent is ever looking for another recommendation for a lender, this is how all my closings go. This is how I do business. Look at my Google reviews. Boom, 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 right? And you never know when that title rep's going to be like, hey, this is your third bad closing with this lender, Mr. Realtor. You really need to look at Mark, right? He's a local guy, and they'll vouch for you, and that's some of the best ways to build relationships in this business, is what I call anchoring. It's using a relationship to anchor another new relationship, and that's what I try to teach my loan officers all the time. And then with agents, on in terms of like the playbook, um, my value proposition, like, I like to tell people that, hey, like, a lot of what, it's kind of, it contrasts what I just said, but with agents I go a little bit differently, because like, they should expect us to do our jobs, right? Like, like, getting a closing on time is nothing to really brag about. It's something that you're already supposed to be doing, you know? Um, like, qualifying a buyer correctly is not something to brag about, it's something that you're already supposed to be doing. And the script kind of changes because you're talking to a different person now in that business to business relationship. Agents don't really care if you do what you're supposed to do, right? Like, they care if you do something that someone else couldn't do, right? Another lender couldn't do, but they don't necessarily care that, like, like, if they sent you someone who's like, for example, they're a W2 engineer at GM, like, that has, 800 credit score, like, they expect you to pre-approve that client with no problem. you know. But it's the other things where with real estate agents, I think we try to be a little bit more intentional with the value we provide. So, like we try to find things outside of the scope of like our job to help them with, but to help them with like their jobs, right? For example, so something that a listing agent does all the time is they walk into listing presentations, right? So like you can't list a home without ever walking foot into it. You have to go sit down, talk with the seller. You're a real estate agent, Mark, so you know this. You have to go sit down with the seller, right?
Yep.
You have to talk, and you have to prepare a seller net sheet. You have to ask them how much they owe on their mortgage and things like that. You have to, here's how much you pay in transfer taxes. It's such, here's my commission, here's how much you pay the buyer's agent, all of that. So what can I do to help you be prepared for that conversation as your mortgage partner? And look, I might not win the deal, and you have to like remember that this isn't like the end result of all of the things you do to provide value isn't, hey, how can I get a deal out of this? It's, hey, how can we keep strengthening this relationship and both of us win together? You know,
Right.
and so I'm not doing this to help them win the listing agent so I can get the buyer who gets who buys the home. But hey, I might, do an open house with them, and we might get two or three buyers, right? Like you never know. You have to just be intentional and just be willing to help. But how can I help them with this listing presentation? Well, like we pay for certain technology like Remine, where we can, or Property Radar, which you can pay for with UWM, and you get a little discount, and you can look up how much the seller owes on their mortgage estimated, like what their estimated mortgage balance is, what their monthly payment is. So if you list your home, you might have to make one mortgage payment by the time you sell. And then here's how much is your mortgage balance. Okay, you could pull, a house canary report. We can see what the comps are. And then, like these are all things that we can provide to our listing agent before they walk into, or the agent before they walk into the listing appointment, to increase their chances of getting that listing. Because the more prepared you are, like, wouldn't you rather know before you walk into that home how much they owe on their mortgage, what the property taxes are, what the transfer taxes would be? Like you already have an idea in your head, like, okay, this is how much they should expect to net from this sale. So that way, if they say something unreasonable, you can kind of address that objection at that point in time. You're prepared for it. Other things like we can, help them leverage a competitive scenario, right? Like I tell my clients all the time, or my clients and my agents, we have a process called know before you offer, where it's like, hey, if you're shopping in Clarkston, well, the west side of Clarkston and the east side of Clarkston, you might get different property tax rates, right? You might get different insurance, right? Your monthly payment's going to change. So, and your out of pocket costs, insurance might be more expensive if you're on a lake versus if you're not, right? So, we give them a full housing expense worksheet before they put an offer on the home. And we let the agent know, like, hey, you want us to, do you want us to do this? Because if they put an offer in, they put earnest money down, they pay for an inspection, and they figure out the monthly payment's not comfortable. Well, you did all this work for no reason, and now
Right.
you're doing more work to try and get their EMD back because they got cold feet. So we call it know before you offer, and then also that kind of helps us too, because if we know when they're offering, then we can kind of work with the agent, excuse me, like, hey, like, is this a competitive scenario? Did the listing agent say, there are other offers on the table? Okay, well, this is how much funds a borrower has available. We can structure this amount of appraisal gap, and instead of 20% down, I can do 15% down LPMI, and like, we can make the monthly payment work and all this. And that's where, in my opinion, other than like, hey, closing on time and you ordered the appraisal on time, you got the CD out on time, this is where you really show your value, right? And where you really show, hey, I understand these products, I understand the nuances of what the borrower's goals are and how to make that work. And I tell agents all the time, like, the lender you work with is a direct, obviously, reflection of you, but also it's a direct indicator of whether or not you get a referral. So if that lender doesn't know what they're doing, and you referred them, then obviously the chances of them getting a referral is slim to none, but you as well, you're directly impacted by that. So, in
Yeah,
terms of
you
purchase
you
playbook,
become the
that's
expert. You become the
exactly.
expert at that point.
Yeah, and like I tell my team all the time too, and I'm sure you've learned this. You've been in the business for a while. Like, you don't have to work with every agent, you know. Some agents will work a certain way that does not meet the way you run your business, and that's okay. There's 4 times as many agents as there are loan officers. So, so there's plenty of, other relationships that you can build. But, for me at least, like, I value an agent relationship where they value me enough to cover the numbers portion of everything. And if they're and it's okay to make suggestions. Like, I'm not saying like you can't say, hey, what does this sales price look like versus this sales price? Like, that's what I'm here for. But like, what I'm not going to deal with is like, hey, your fees are too high, or your can you cut your commission, or can you do this? Because it's like both of us can, right? Like, so it's why are we, like, those kinds of things, I would say, has deterred some relationships for me as well. It's like, hey, why is the rate like this? Why don't you have this product or this DPA? Whereas, like, hey, you're reading the headlines and what the client can get, but not the nuances of, the cons of it, right?
Right, right.
So a lot of those conversations, I like to have. But yeah, there's some of the things I guess you could say in our playbook, um, that we've learned. Trust me, everything I've learned though, Mark, has been through doing things the wrong way. So I embrace failure. It's a big proponent for me. I know everything I've done wrong, which has helped me do everything I do right, where I like to think so.
I love
So
that. I love that. I absolutely love that. All right, Mob, I got you for about another minute here.
all right,
And you've been absolutely great. Lots of information. I mean, just you've knocked it out of the park here.
appreciate you.
What advice would you give to the broker community right now in regards to your mindset for, we just finished quarter 1 for the rest of this year. What advice would you give to these brokers out there that are listening to this, that have listened 100 times or have listened, this is their first listen? What piece of advice would you give out there for your mindset for the next 3 quarters to finish out the year?
Great question. Um, I would have to take it back to mindset wise. I would have to take it back to one of my favorite, like, kind of quotes, I guess you could say, from one of my childhood heroes, Kobe Bryant. I'm a big believer in Mamba Mentality. We have a big Mamba Mentality poster in our podcast room. It's we have a book, all sorts of things. But for me, one thing he talked about was just stacking days, and ignoring a lot of, like right now, relative to other times in this industry. Like, I've been in this industry since post Brexit. So, through the post Brexit phase, then I remember post Brexit when rates ticked up to like 4.5 and people thought the sky was falling. And then, they dropped again, and now this. But the one thing that I would say that we could all use is just ignoring the noise, right? Like, there's a lot of noise now more than ever, with the new administration and tariffs, inflation, the Fed, Rocket, and Mr. Cooper, and all these acquisitions and all this. There's a lot of there's more out there to keep you distracted for years and years and years than there has ever been, right? And I think the biggest mindset thing that you can have is focus obviously on what you can control and what's in front of you, but ignore that, all of that noise, and really focus on, like, how can I maximize the hours that I'm working in a day? How can I build for the future on things that I can really control? Because I don't have $1 billion or multi billions of dollars, and I can't control what the people with billions of dollars do, right? But what I can control are the resources that I have available to me, the time available to me in a day, how intentional I am with the activities that I do, and just, how I treat people, and the work, my effort, and how much information can I learn, right? And all of that, like, all of these things that are in my control, those are the things that I focus on, and I just try to stack every single day. Can I get a little bit better every single day? And I know over X amount of time, where people might take a break, they might take I might take a quick breath, right? I won't be. I'll be ready, and that's really where, you might be better than me today, but over 6 months, over a year, over 5 years, over 10 years, I will have stacked so many more days than you, that, the gap that I have between me and the person behind me is just going to be unrecognizable. And I think a lot of us could really focus on that because, I'm scrolling through LinkedIn these days and Facebook. I hate posting now because I used to love posting my CTCs and whatnot, but I feel like every time I post, it's either someone trying to sell me on a coaching or something. It's it's the sky is falling. It's misinformation with some kind of graph about multifamily housing going, and delinquency rates or whatever. And it's like there's just so much out there to keep you distracted, and that's what a lot of people want. That's what your competitors want. That's what, if even if you wake up and you're like, hey, I have zero enemies, just imagine this imaginary enemy that's just waiting for you to fail every single day. That's just like, hey, I want them to be so distracted today that they get nothing done.
Yeah.
And that's the mindset that I think we got to have, is just like stacking days, ignoring the noise, and just focusing on what we can control. Because it's a 2 point something trillion dollar purchase market, largest purchase market that's ever been available, right? And we're sitting here squabbling over who's going to take our clients, when really, while we're squabbling, they're taking our clients. you
Yeah.
know so just pick up the phone, start working, and let's dominate. And that's the mindset that I would probably have. I don't know if that was good or bad or indifferent, but
No, Mob, listen, dude, you're the man. I freaking love this one. We're gonna close this out here. We didn't get to banter back and forth about golf and how we're gonna get together this summer. But no, Mob, seriously, dude, you were absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so much for the
thank you.
time that you spent with us in the community. There's a lot to take in, a lot that people can take out of this too. Obviously, we love your background and how you've basically been on every side of it, and you're a realist about this. And I love what you said. It's almost like I want to get a t-shirt made of it that says, you embrace your failures, but that's fine. I'm just going to continue to get better. So, Mob, thanks for joining us today, dude. You're the man.
Appreciate you, Mark. Thank you for having me. Thank you for all you guys do, supporting the broker community. There's only so much that we can do as a small business, but when we combine all of our forces together, especially with an organization like AIME, it really shows the big brass out there that we really are, a force to be reckoned with. So I appreciate you being a steward of that and a governor of that, man. You're doing a fantastic job, you, John, the whole team over at AIM, and we really, really appreciate the support.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we have a great team. Always want to give them shouts. So thanks, bud. And brokers, if you want to get caught up on all of our past podcast episodes, as well as other AIM Network podcasts, please head over to aimgroup.com/broker to broker. You can also listen to and watch all of AIM Network podcast episodes on YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. If you're on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to @AIM National. Once again, that's @AIM National. We want to get a bigger focus on that for more great wholesale content. Everyone else, please rate our podcast and leave a review. All of this helps us spread the word and proving to the world that brokers are best. So, Mob, thanks again, my man. We'll be in touch soon.
Yes, sir.